Hello everyone! So today in this video I would like to talk to you about the things that I used to find difficult in English when I was still learning it, and some of these things I still find difficult even after having spent over 6 years in the UK now. There's two reasons why I wanted to make this video. The first one is because sometimes people say that English is a very easy language to learn, and I just feel like that undermines the effort that people have put into learning English, and I really don't like that because I really don't think English is an easy language to learn. And the second reason is to show you, hopefully, that any language learner ever will face difficulties and struggles when trying to achieve a high level of proficiency in the language they're learning. And if you're learning English at the moment, hopefully that will encourage you to keep going and not give up. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My native languages are French and Portuguese, so my difficulties and struggles will reflect that, obviously. The first thing I wanted to talk about is pronunciation. I think for non-native speakers, English pronunciation is extremely difficult. In my case, what was difficult was vowel sounds that don't exist in French or in Portuguese. For example, you have the I sound in English, as in bit, and the long vowel E sound, such as beach or beat. And these sounds don't exist in French, so that was difficult because it means I had to create new vowel sounds which weren't available in my bank of sounds, if I may say, It's not available in English and Portuguese, and I can't really use sounds from any of these two languages to make these sounds. So it's something you have to learn from scratch, and that can be difficult. And in fact, that explains why French people, when pronouncing the word beat or bit, they will say beat, because that's the only sound they have that's close enough. But it's obviously not the same as E and I sound. Another sound that I used to find very difficult in English, and I still sometimes struggle to pronounce it, is the R sound in English. So I can do it isolated, so I can do the R sound. I can pronounce it at the beginning of words such as, I don't know, right or wrong, or even read, but sometimes if I'm speaking very quickly, I notice when I'm editing my videos especially, that I don't pronounce it properly. Like, it's close enough, but I still find it difficult to pronounce. I'm not sure why. It's not for lack of trying, but I guess I'll always have an accent, so I guess my accent will be stronger when I have to pronounce the R sound in English. So here you go. The last thing that I find difficult in terms of pronunciation is where to place the stress. If you don't know what a stress is essentially when in a word the voice will rise a bit more at certain parts of the word, at certain syllables. For example, if I say the word amazing, you have amazing. So it's not amazing, it's amazing. It's not amazing, it's not amazing, but it's amazing. So it has to be at a specific place in the word, otherwise it changes the pronunciation of the word completely. And for French speakers, native speakers of French, it's difficult because we don't have that at all. Everything we pronounce is sort of flat. I mean, we have rising intonation for questions, but not for words, individually. So that's a challenge. And the challenge is even harder, I think, for certain words such as increase, because depending on whether it's a noun or a verb, the stress will be at different places in the word. So for example, I will say an increase, but if it's a verb, I will say to increase. And that's quite difficult to remember, but it's something I just had to learn. And now I think I do it sort of spontaneously, naturally, but sometimes I have to think, where does the stress go? And I have to repeat the word many times or ask people to just correct me or tell me what is the right pronunciation. The second thing I wanted to talk about in this video is verbs. So the conjugation is sort of okay for me in English. I mean, it's kind of challenging at the beginning, but it's not too complicated because you don't have so many different forms for each verb, for each tense. So, in the present tense, you have like 2 forms. In the past tense, you have 1 form, etc., etc. So that's quite easy, I think. But what I find difficult is phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs, essentially, to make it simple, is when you have a verb such as turn down, which only makes sense when these 2 words are together. But if you were to translate each word individually, turn down doesn't make sense, Turn down just has a completely different meaning, which is not related to the 2 words translated individually. I don't know if that makes sense, I hope it does. Another example is the phrasal verb get on, and get on same as turn down doesn't really make sense if you translate it word by word. It just makes sense together. And I think that's really difficult. And there's tons sometimes that I don't remember. You know, I sometimes mix up which word goes after the verb. You know, is it get on? Is it get off? Is it get out? Is it get in? I don't know, whatever. I mean, I know these ones, but it's just an example. But I think that's something that's very challenging. And again, it's something I had to learn as it came up. Another difficulty that I used to have, not so much now, but still sometimes I have to think about it, is when a verb sometimes takes a preposition in English and sometimes it doesn't. So that's difficult because in French and English, you know, it doesn't always match. Sometimes a verb in French will take a preposition, and in English, sometimes it doesn't. An example would be to say, I obeyed my mother, but in French we would say, j'ai obéi à ma mère. So we would say, I obeyed to my mum, or obeyed to my mum. And I think that that's tricky because it's just something you have to learn as it comes up. And it's, yeah, you can't really use French as a reference point to work out whether there is a preposition or not all the time. Sometimes it works, sometimes it's similar, but even sometimes when there is a preposition, it's not the same one in French as it is in English. So that just makes it quite challenging. And I hear a lot of people that are proficient in English that make this mistake. So for example, they will forget the preposition of when they say, oh, remind me of this. They will say, remind me this, for example. So that's quite difficult to sort of remember and say spontaneously. And the third and last thing I wanted to talk about in this video is accent. So I'm not so much referring to accent as in American and British English because, well, I mean, it is difficult, obviously, because for any language, you have to learn the pronunciation and the correct accent to sound, you know, as clear as possible. But I'm referring really to the fact that English is a language which is spoken by a lot of non-native speakers. And in fact, most speakers of English are non-native speakers. And for some reason, it seems like people that teach us English when we're in school, they forget about this. They only focus on the standard varieties of English. It does make sense. I'm not saying it's a stupid thing to do, but I think there needs to be more about exposing people to a variety of accents, because even if we don't take into account non-native accents, if we just look at England, for example, a southern accent and a northern accent will sound extremely different depending on where the people are from. And I remember when I arrived in England about 6 years ago, that was a big challenge. Sometimes I had people that would talk to me and I would be like, I have no idea what this person is saying. Or I had to focus a lot, and after 20 minutes my brain was just like, nope, can't take it anymore, too difficult to understand you. But obviously something you need to practice, you need to train your ear really. I think that's what it comes down to. And as for non-native accents, it's another challenge as well, because you're exposed to people that come from so many countries, you know, when you live in the UK, that you have to really train your ear. I remember, for example, that Indian accents used to be the hardest accents for me to understand amongst non-native speakers, but it got better. But I know now if I'm watching a TV show or like a film and there's like Indian accents, I need to usually use subtitles. I mean, I can sort of understand, but it just takes too much brain power, so subtitles really help. Now, at the moment, obviously, I don't really struggle so much with accents because I'm used to them. I hear a variety of accents every day, so it's not really something that I find difficult. But every now and then, if there's a person that comes from a country that is, you know, that I don't know, or like, you know, that has an accent that I've never heard before, or maybe they just don't have, you know, really good pronunciation in English, then sometimes I can struggle. But I like to think that living in England has made me a good listener in terms of accents. So that's it for this video. I hope you found it informative. If you can relate to any of the things that I've said, or if you have any other struggles with English or any other language, why not? Then let me know in the comment section. It can be interesting to sort of reflect on the things we find difficult when learning languages. So I will see you later. Bye!